How can it be? The Sooners fall, get back up, and fall again. The dreams of a playoff spot quickly turning into nightmares. 37-30. A loss in Iowa for the first time since 1960. An old wound flares up again. A defense that fails to make enough stops. We've seen it time after time after time. But this Saturday is different. In this game, one play can change everything. Records are thrown out the window, and legends are made. Texas and Oklahoma, the Red River rivalry, a tradition embedded in the blood of fans on both sides of the border. A hatred that runs so deep that turning horns down has become synonymous with the Crimson and Cream. It's anyone's game. It's anyone's golden hat. But this is your pregame show. And this is Gameday U.
Welcome to the heart of Dallas. The streets are bustling, the sun is shining, and we're getting you ready for Oklahoma and Texas in the Red River Showdown. Parker Thune alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace. This is Gameday U. Shannon, Caroline, there's a lot less hype coming into this game than anybody could have imagined at the beginning of the season. Texas rolls in 2-1. Oklahoma's 1-2, unranked, and coming off back-to-back losses in regular season play for the first time since 1999.
You know, I wasn't even born yet. That was the year I was born. So I'm looking for the bounce back. I'm excited to see them come out hot. I think it's going to be a real close-knit game, but I'm excited to see it.
I think we're all a little worried for the first time in a long time. I don't know if either one of these teams are big contenders in the Big 12 anymore. So this game is really going to make an impact statement across the country.
Well, Shannon, Caroline, it's the question I feel like everyone is asking at this point, but I'll pose it to the two of y'all. What went wrong for Oklahoma last week? What continues to go wrong?
I'm going to have to just get down to it and say the play calling. I feel like it's the same song, different dance. We see this multiple times throughout the country. Lincoln Riley needs someone under him to tell him, you know, kind of that confirmation a little bit. And I'm going to refer back to Joel Klatt, Fox Sports guy. He says he was telling Lincoln Riley that the air raid offense makes it easy for the quarterback. And I just can't help but think that everything we're doing is making it 10 times harder on Spencer Rattler right now. Now, Lincoln's known for being that quarterback wizard. He is nothing like Nick Saban in the sense that he takes his quarterback and kind of builds his offense around that. And there's just no weapons that I'm seeing that are being able to exemplify Spencer Rattler right now. So I'm really disappointed in, you know, those 4th and 5s, and we're just punting it or going for the field goals. We're going to start taking some chances, because when your defense is as bad as ours is right now, there's just not much that we shouldn't be taking risks on.
Now, Caroline, let me ask you this, because it's a popular debate at the moment. Do you think Lincoln Riley needs to think about rescinding play calling duties to another coach?
Absolutely. I don't care how much of an offensive genius you are, you need someone under you, because when you're a head coach, you're thinking of all three sides of the ball constantly. And you need someone else under you to be able to say, hey, like, this didn't work 3 plays ago. I know you're probably thinking about something else in your head, which is completely understandable, but we've just seen this so many times, and yes, I think he definitely needs to hire an offensive coordinator.
Do you have any ideas of who that might be?
No, not a chance right now. I think there was a lot of transitions last year in moving a lot of head coaches that weren't really shining, and they were moved into offensive coordinator positions. But as of right now, and it's going to be hard because Lincoln is such an offensive guy.
Yes.
But he's got to take a step back. If he wants to control all three sides of the ball, then he needs to bring someone else in that can specialize in offense only.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that he has to give a little to get a little. So I think that it would be a good idea to bring someone in too. But what I think went wrong is the O-line. The O-line slacked, and they've been so good in previous years. But this year, they're just no longer dominant, and we saw that clearly today. The pass blocking, it was an issue last year, and it's still an issue today, if not more prevalent. Bill Bedenbaugh needs to switch something around because clearly whatever he's doing is not working. Spencer Rattler's getting rocked left and right. Last game, he had 3 hurries and 2 sacks. That's just unacceptable for an O-line as good as we are. And I don't know if it's Creed Humphrey who needs to step up and be the leader and really be the one to say, hey, you guys, like, we need to change something. We need to do something different and take it into his own hands as a junior. But I just don't think that the O-line played well at all. They were not explosive, and they just weren't up to tempo. Austin Stogner, yes, played so well, but it just wasn't there. It's not there, and I think that the O-line this game really needs to come out and prove themselves.
Now, Oklahoma returned all 5 starters from their offensive line last year. So, clearly it's not a personnel issue. What is the issue right now for the Sooners on that offensive line?
I have to say it's the leadership. I just don't think there's anybody in that role where it was Neville Gallimore and K9 being those guys to really step up and lead the team. They don't have anybody there right now. So I think it's up to the guys to determine what they need to do different mentality for sure.
I'm not so sure though that we can even count Austin Stogner on the O-line right now. He's our leading receiver, which is just bad in my opinion because your H-back and your tight end position should be the backup receiver. You're playing mostly as an O-line kind of guy, and we're having to pull him out deep every play, and that's just not okay with me.
Yeah, he's not a fast guy like that. He can keep up, but I just don't think that's his position to be there.
Now, lack of leadership on the offensive line, can you chalk that up to coaching, or does that fall on Creed Humphrey as the offensive captain?
I think it falls a little bit on both. Creed Humphrey for sure, because as you said, he is the offensive captain and he's been there for so long that he's made his mark and made his place. But I also think that it is on the offensive coordinator. I think that Bedenbaugh there needs to be a different chemistry between the two, and maybe there's some misconnections there, but the two of them need to work together and figure something else out because it's not looking good. They are slacking.
Yeah, now let's talk about a unit that also brought 5 starters back from last season's squad, that being the secondary. All 5 of the starters for the Sooners, Buki Radley-Hiles, Jaden Davis, Trey Brown, Delarian Turner-Yell, Patrick Fields, all drew starts a season ago. And yet here we are in 2020, and the secondary can make no headway. In fact, they look atrocious, perhaps weaker than any other unit on either side of the football. So to me, y'all, as I look at the way that the secondary lines up here in 2020, I can't help but think that there's a personnel issue at play here. And I think, as Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch were mentioning in their early week press conferences this week, it might be time to shake things up and give some of those younger guys an opportunity. Because you look at Patrick Fields, who's the defensive captain, we'll talk about him a bit later on. He dropped 3 interceptions last week, 3 plays that should have been turnovers. Pat Fields couldn't capitalize on any of them. Delarian Turner-Yell, to his credit, has been perhaps the most consistent defender for the Sooners all season, save with the possible exception of Brian Asamoah. But on the corners, it's a weak game right now between Trey Brown, Jaden Davis, and Brendan Radley-Hiles. Look, I don't think it's rocket science. You can't have a guy of Brendan Radley-Hiles' stature in the nickel defending a tight end like Charlie Kohler up at Iowa State. But also, he's just, I'll use the same word you use, Shannon. He's slacking right now. Was penalized 3 times.
And then have penalties. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, the penalties are absurd. I don't know. Out of the question, that was the only time we even saw the defense turn up, was literally when they were getting penalties.
But he should learn, he should be comfortable in his own body by now. A lot of people want to make the excuse of his size. Sometimes when you have defensive backs that are smaller or bigger, the penalties are just a little different because they have to play differently. But you are a junior in college. You are playing college football. You were a 5-star recruit. You should know your body type by now.
Well, Trey Brown, the lone senior in this secondary, as you mentioned, Buki Radley-Hiles, a guy that has been starting since his freshman year. Jaden Davis started last year as a true freshman. All of these players have been in these types of positions before.
Yes. They've been under the pressure, so they need to be able to figure that out. It's not like it's a crazy game. We played Iowa State, for goodness sake. Figure it out. You played harder teams than that.
Well, and you stick with what's tried and true, especially on the defensive side of the football. And when you try, guys, and you don't get the performance that you're looking for, how long does it take for you to realize, okay, it's time to make a switch here. It's time to give some of these younger guys an opportunity to show what they have.
Exactly, and when are we going to go back to the fact that some of these upperclassmen, yes, they weren't always under Alex Grinch, so why don't, if we're going to give Alex Grinch that opportunity and not put him on the hot seat just yet, why don't we put some of those guys in that Alex Grinch is all they know?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, and I think that's the question now is what can they do to switch it up? Why are they not mixing it up? This is the time to do it. It's still early in the season. Try it. Give it a chance. I'm sure that it'll have a different outcome.
Well, now we're facing Texas, and we're in the same boat we've been in. And I would even go back to Missouri State. I don't think we looked any better or any different. Missouri State is just garbage. That's the only reason we were able to look semi-good. And
let me ask you, how much of an indictment is it on Alex Grinch that he is also the safeties coach?
You know, it's so hard for me to not put him on the hot seat. I want to, because the way that we are playing, I feel like if you have 2 years under your belt with a team, you should be able to make way more progress than you have. But again, like I said, these aren't guys that Alex Grinch recruited. However, if we don't get something done, Alex Grinch is not going to be no defensive back in the country wants to come to Oklahoma. And that's just the God honest truth.
I don't know if it's that harsh right now to say that. I still think that he is new.
I 100% think it's harsh to say that. No one is going to come to Oklahoma and say, wow, I'm a 4 or 5 star defensive back. Unless you grew up in the heart of Tulsa or Oklahoma City, you're going to go to one of those SEC teams that's known as DBU.
Well, I also think that it's on Alex Grinch to turn that around and make a new statement for himself. Yeah. So I wouldn't put him on the hot seat yet. I'd give him maybe after Texas. And if he still doesn't perform, then that's when I would say it's time to do something different, switch it up.
Right.
And you got to keep in mind, Alex Grinch does have 4 defensive backs in this most recent 2020 signing class. He's got 4 more pledged in 2021, all of them coming from out of state. So he does have some recruiting pull in that capacity.
That's okay, but Brendan Radley Hiles was a 5-star recruit. So let's just remember that.
All right, well, coming up next, we'll toss it back to our Gaylord Hall studios. Kemper Ball, Ashley Vandeveld, and Will Blessing take you around the nation as we prepare for all of today's most prominent games. We'll be back with you in about 15 minutes here on Gameday U.
Welcome back to Gameday U, the one and only student-produced pregame show at the University of Oklahoma. I'm Will Blessing, and I'm joined here in the studio by Kemper Ball and Ashley Vandeveld. How are you all feeling today?
So good. Ready for some football.
Yeah, ready for some football.
Excited for OU Texas. I'm sure all the students are already up, getting ready with us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right, so the big game is almost here, like you said, the one and only Red River Showdown. But before we break down anything from this week, Dylan Rivera gives you the top 5 plays from last week. Dylan?
Thanks, Will. We have a lot of interceptions today, but we start with a touchdown catch from UCF in Tulsa. The southpaw slinger Dylan Gabriel lets it fly out to the right side, and wide receiver Jacob Harris yanks that ball from the sky for the first touchdown of the evening. Next to the SEC, Arkansas and Mississippi State. KJ Costello evades the pressure and rolls out right, throws the ball down the sideline, but he doesn't see Joe Faucha. Faucha comes up with the toe tap interception. 2 feet down for good measure. Arkansas would go on to get the win and snap their 20-game conference losing streak. South Carolina and the University of Florida. Wideout Kadarius Toney slips and Trask still expects him to come through on his route, but instead, Gamecock DB Israel Mukwamu is there to make the one-handed INT. Mukwamu extends that left arm out there and nabs the ball just before it hits the ground. Now in Morgantown, West Virginia, the Mountaineers and the Baylor Bears. Jarrett Dagey drops back to pass, lets it go, but Terrell Bernard rips the ball out of the air. But take a closer look. Bernard bobbles the ball around and kicks it up to himself to make the interception. Virginia and Clemson, keep your eyes on the screen because this is one of the best catches you will ever see. Andrew Booth Jr. does his best Odell impersonation and makes a beautiful interception. He loves it. His teammates are loving it. The fans are loving it. One hand is all he needs to make the top play, maybe of this year. Kemper, Ashley, Will, back to you.
Thanks, Dylan. Now, we've already seen some heroes arise this season. This last week, some players really saved the day for their teams. Which college football player rose to the occasion in Week 5 of college football? Kemper, we'll start with you.
All right, for me, I'm going with the worst kept secret in college football. Everybody knows that there is something cooking down in Gainesville. The Florida Gators are rolling, and it is in no small part due to their quarterback, Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask has put together an amazing season. He's looking like a Heisman candidate already, and that is in large part thanks to his weapons, because he's got weapons all over the field. Like that guy right there, that's tight end Kyle Pitts. The Kyle duo is real. They're calling it the Kyle driver, and that is why, because of touchdowns like that. It's too easy. They're too efficient. Kyle Pitts has 6 touchdown receptions on just 12 catches. That's what they do. Now you see Trask, he's got ways to hurt you in multiple ways. He can run, he can throw. You've got to be on your toes. You got to be paying attention when you're playing against Kyle Trask, because he'll do things like that and he'll set up plays like this where you think he might be running that read option again, but instead he's just going to throw it right over the top to his other tight end. That's Trent Whitmore. The tight end duo of Whitmore and Pickett, it's lethal, it's dangerous. Gainesville's going to be hard to stop if they keep that going. You see him get going a little bit more. He keeps it going. He's a great player. He had a great week. He ended up with 21 for 29 and 268 yards and 4 total touchdowns. A lot of weapons down there in Gainesville. I really like Kyle Trask. Got my Kyles confused there for a second. I really like Kyle Trask's chance to be a Heisman finalist in New York this year, or at least on a New York Zoom call. But yeah, that's my hero, Kyle Trask.
Yeah, I think the Kyle driver can really do great things for Florida. I mean, I think he could, do what Tebow did back there in like 2009?
Oh, I absolutely think they're a national title contender, if that's what you're asking, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Kemper, well, fair pick, but I'm going the little bit lesser known route with John Mechie III, who is a wide receiver for the University of Alabama. He's only a sophomore, and fun fact, he is actually from Canada, and he had an insane game last week, you guys, against Texas A&M. He had 5 receptions for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns last weekend. And we know guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle, but I think he's right in line behind those players, and he's going to do big things for Alabama. It's really fun to watch players like these, and it's going to be a great time.
It's just a wide receiver factory down there in Tuscaloosa.
It really
They're
is.
just turning them out year after year. It's very frustrating if you don't like Alabama.
It is.
It
It's
is.
incredibly frustrating if you're not a fan of the Crimson Tide. I don't know. Great wide receivers, great NFL receivers. But
Yeah.
I don't know. My hero, you talked about Florida. I'm going to talk about a former Gator, Felipe Franks, the quarterback for Arkansas. Now, this guy, he came from Florida. He's a senior at Arkansas. This is his first year playing for the Razorbacks. He had 2 separate 1,000-yard seasons at Florida. Currently, he's sitting at 412 at Arkansas for this year. He had 2 touchdowns and 212 yards in their win against Mississippi State, which was the first SEC win for Arkansas since 2017, snapping a 20-game losing streak. And plus, they did it against number 16 Mississippi State. Now, I think he can push the Razorbacks to mild success. I don't think they're going to do they're not going to be the best team in college football, but they're going to do something.
That team just needs to put together some success. Any success. A win is huge for that program. Arkansas just needs to string together a couple games like this, and maybe that program can start getting back on the right track.
Yeah, I think back to a couple years ago when they paid UNT some large amount of money to come so they could beat them, and then UNT just smoked them down in.
That's a program that has been down in the dirt for way too long. I need Arkansas to come back.
Completely. Now, along the same lines, we've seen some players really fail to show up for their squad. Who is your zero for this week, Kemper?
All right, Will and I are playing a little game of connect the dots on our hero and zeros, because my zero is going to stay in that exact same game. I'm talking about the quarterback on the other side, Mississippi State quarterback KJ Costello. Now, KJ Costello looked like a beast last week, throwing for over 600 yards against the defending national champions. But this week, it was a different story. 3 interceptions against Arkansas. Felipe Franks got some help from that defense. And most of them were just bad decisions by KJ Costello. If you take another look at this first one that ended up being a 69-yard pick 6, he just overthrows his receiver right here. Just completely misses him, leads to an easy interception. Now, you see him go a little bit later on, second quarter, trying to get some points on the board before halftime. he would throw another interception here just right into a wall of 2 Arkansas defenders. There's 2 men standing right there. He just doesn't see them. These are just bad decisions that completely take Mississippi State out of this game. The final one, the dagger, just doesn't see the defender there. It was really confusing after him looking like a world beater last week. And I think this is something you can expect from a Mike Leach offense. You can expect, there's going to be the highs where you throw for 700 yards and 5 touchdowns. And there's going to be the lows where you throw for 3 interceptions like this. But you just got to minimize those mistakes by not making bad decisions. And as you saw from those highlights, it was bad decision after bad decision after bad decision for KJ Costello.
Oh, completely. I mean, college football as a game is just so unpredictable. I think KJ Costello, Mississippi State's always been like a, average program. I think he's going to stick along that. Maybe they'll win 10 games, or no, they won't.
That'd be a good season.
Maybe they'll win 10
That would be a really good season.
Really good season.
I was like, that's ambitious.
They'll win 8 games. Maybe they'll win 8 games. Maybe they'll do fine. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, well, my 0 for this week is none other than Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback at the University of Central Florida. UCF got beat by Tulsa last weekend in a shocking upset. UCF was ranked number 11. Dylan Gabriel threw 1 interception and was 28 for 51 in passing, which should not be happening from a number 11, a ranked team that has a quarterback like that. So not a lot of completion, and that puts way too much pressure on your defense. If you're going to throw 51 times, your completion rate has to be much higher than that. You can't win games when you're throwing like that, and like I said, your defense is going to get tired. It's just not a good combination, those 2 things. So right now, I think UCF is looking really overrated, and they need to play better if they want to kind of get back into it.
Okay.
I just want to point something out about that Tulsa UCF game. A couple weeks ago when I was on this show, I was catching a lot of flack for defending Tulsa and saying that people were overreacting to Oklahoma State barely beating them. Now, Tulsa gets a top 15 win, and Oklahoma State's the only Big 12 team that remains undefeated.
Yeah,
so what I'm saying is I was right.
I think you were definitely right back there, and I've always thought UCF is a little overrated. I mean, they do
agree.
have former Sooner Josh Heupel as a head coach, but I don't know. I've always thought they were a little overrated. But my pick, we're sticking back here at the University of Oklahoma. My pick is Brendan Radley Hiles. Going back to where he was in high school, he was a 5-star recruit. He was the number 9 athlete in the nation. He chose Oklahoma over Clemson, FSU, UCLA. But looking at him here in our loss to Iowa State, so many missed tackles for so much yardage. For the season, he's only had 9 tackles. So many missed tackles. It's just embarrassing what a former 5-star recruit could be doing. He's had no interceptions this season. Coach Grinch really, he prioritizes turnovers, but no turnovers for Radley Hiles. Only 2 interceptions in his entire career. I don't know. I think he's just overrated for what he was.
I don't want to. We're going to talk about OU a little bit later on in the program. I don't want to step on those toes. I just, you need a guy like that you bring in as a 5-star who has been playing in the program for as long as he has now. Like, that's someone you really expect to come in and be a building block for a defense that you're trying to reconstruct from the ground up. And him being a disappointment has set back the entire OU defense by maybe a couple of years.
Oh, I agree, because, he's supposed to be a leader on this speed D, and you're looking at some of those clips, he really wasn't that much speed at all. He wasn't super fast.
He showed some speed when he was hitting the ground missing tackles.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, it's called the coaching carousel for a reason. Head coaches are constantly cycling from one place to the next. We could see some big names get sacked very early on. I want to know who you all think is in the hot seat. Kemper?
Okay, I don't think Tom Herman at Texas buns are burning yet, but that seat's getting a little toasty, if you know what I mean. He has been disappointing, to say the least, since he got to UT. They are 1-3 against TCU since he got there. They are 1-3 against the University of Oklahoma since he got there. They have not had a season with less than 4 losses since Tom Herman got there. This was the guy that was supposed to bring Texas back, as they like to say. And the only thing that he's done, he won him a Sugar Bowl, but all he's done outside of that is lose 4 games a season and lose to OU. And there's no faster way to get run out of Austin than losing to OU. He's been attacked by the media for multiple things, for acting unprofessionally. I really feel his seat getting hotter, especially if this year, when OU is having a down year and the Big 12 is wide open. Anyone could win the Big 12. When we're in a year where we're saying because Oklahoma can't win the Big 12, might not win the Big 12, anyone can win the Big 12, that's not good. Because when we're saying Oklahoma can't win the Big 12, Texas should be the team saying, oh, well, that's us, baby. We're next in line, no problem. But that's just not who they are right now.
Not at all. I believe that Texas will never be back as long as Tom Herman's there. He has no idea how to utilize these recruits he's getting. They're the best, but I don't know.
I think it's disappointing because I had high hopes for Tom Herman because he came from Houston, and Houston beat Oklahoma when he was there. So I think that
if he could do it in Houston, he can't do it in UT, that's a problem.
It is.
I agree.
Big
yes.
problem.
Ashley, what about you?
Yes, sorry. And my coach on the hot seat is Will Muschamp, you guys, out of South Carolina. This is his 5th season with the Gamecocks, and last season he went 4-8. Granted, he had one of the hardest schedules in the country, but he has also had 25 losses through his first 4 seasons, which is the most among South Carolina head football coaches. He has just never been able to get it going, you guys, with South Carolina. I was kind of surprised by this hire when he didn't do so well at Florida, same division and everything. So I think that it might be time for a change in Columbia. So I think when a coach is in his 5th season and you lose to Tennessee, and I don't think this Tennessee team, honestly, is very good. So I think that it might be time for a change, and I think he's definitely on the hot seat. South Carolina fans want more. They're used to a Steve Spurrier type of winning, so I think he's definitely on the hot seat.
I don't know. I'll have more to say about Tennessee later, but I think it definitely doesn't help South Carolina that they have to play Clemson, and that's their rivalry game. I mean, they're not playing them this year, I don't believe, but in the past, that's definitely not helping them. But my pick is the University of Michigan coach, Jim Harbaugh. Now, if you look at him statistically, he's not that bad of a coach. He has a 47-18 record while he's at Michigan, but you have to look at the details, and the detail I'm talking about is the game. Ohio State, Michigan, the biggest rivalry they have. He is 0-5 against Ohio State in the game, something that Michigan fans have been clamoring for. They want a win. The Michigan has not been a Big Ten champ while he's there. They've had 4 straight bowl losses, and they've gone 10-14 against ranked teams. So I don't know. People have been calling for Jim Harbaugh to be fired. He's only been there for 5 years. I don't know. I'm not sure. Definitely. Now, when Gameday U returns, the remote team will have a preview of the Red River rivalry, as well as final words and callouts. So stay tuned.
Live from the Palace on the Prairie, historic Owen Field in Norman, Oklahoma. This is Sooner Football.
You might recognize this voice from an Oklahoma football broadcast, but Toby Rowland is more complex than that. Alongside commentating Sooner sports, hosting a weekday sports radio show, and instructing OU students, Toby found some free time to write a children's book called Unhitch the Wagon.
I wanted to write a fun kids book, and I knew I wanted it to rhyme, and I knew it probably, at least when I started, I said, I think I want it to be about the ponies.
The book covers the journey of Benny and Bud, 2 ponies aspiring to do the greatest job in the world, pull the Sooner schooner at OU football games as Boomer and Sooner.
I mean, this is a cute book about 2 ponies. But the message is it's okay to dream big.
People say to do what you love, and Toby Rowland completely embodies that phrase, while encouraging kids to strive for their wildest dreams, just as he did.
The ability to spend your life in a community and become a part of that community. And for it to be the team that I grew up loving on top of that, is amazing. So no, this is it for me. This is as great as it could possibly ever be.
It is never too early to introduce children to the rich Sooner tradition, and there is really no better person to do it than the official voice of the Sooners. Sydney Bollier, Gameday U.
Thanks, Sydney. Here we are again in the effervescent environment of downtown Dallas, alongside Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace. I am Parker Thune. Shannon, Caroline, we got one more segment to get through before we call it a morning and break for some tacos. So, before we get to the Oklahoma-Texas preview, let's talk about the conference as a whole, because right now the Big 12 is as wide open as it's been in a decade, maybe longer. 1 undefeated team through 3 weeks of conference play. It's safe to say that nobody saw this coming. So I want to ask you guys a question with no clear answer right now. Give me your best case. Who is the best team in the Big 12 right now?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with a team that I never doubted from the start because unlike Parker, I don't just think a team is good after they beat OU. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the Kansas State Wildcats. Now, I think that Skylar Thompson is such a dynamic quarterback. I think he uses his weapons around him very well. And speaking of weapons, let's talk about Deuce Vaughn. Now, he's not only the leading rusher for the Wildcats, but also the leading receiver. He has 205 rushing yards and 234 receiving. Speaking of rushing yards, let's talk about that 77-yard break that he had against OU. This guy is dynamic, and he's what, like 5'8"? Now I'm going to do a little bit of comparison to the leading rusher in the conference, which is Chuba Hubbard. Compared to Chuba Hubbard, Vaughn has 36 carries for 205 yards. That's an average of 5.7 yards per carry. Chuba Hubbard has 339 yards for 69 carries, and that is an average of 4.9. I think that this team is a jack of all trades. Now, are they the master of anything? Not really. They're not really just super good at any position, but I think that on all three sides of the ball, they make a lot of good statements, and especially on special teams. Now, you're thinking probably, what does special teams have to do with anything? But I think that is one thing that's keeping the Wildcats on their feet. They've blocked, 3 punts up to this point, and I think that that's kind of the thing you have to do. When your team's just kind of average, good, not really great across the board, you've got to have those good special team plays.
Okay, I can't agree with you, but I'm going to have to go with Baylor. Baylor, who has one of the strongest defenses in the Big 12, if not the strongest, is the best team in the Big 12. I have to say that my guy, Charlie Brewer, is a dual threat quarterback, and we've seen that time and time again, despite the loss last week. And talking about the loss last week, they still managed to rally back and get the dub. Or they managed to rally back and still play well. Overall, we've seen that the Bears do start out slow and then gradually build momentum and gradually get up to those high spots. And seeing as Charlie Brewer has key receivers as Tristan Ebner and Ben Sims, tight end, but still does a phenomenal job connecting the passes to them and just being a great team overall. I do think that on both sides, they are the strongest in the Big 12, so have to go with Baylor.
Well, I mentioned at the top that there's one 3-0 team in the Big 12. Who's playing quarterback for that team, Shannon?
I don't want to talk about it.
Come
I
on.
did. You told me so. Shane Illingworth.
Shane
Yeah.
Jab in the beginning.
True freshman out of California. The guy that in week 1 I said, if he played quarterback at Oklahoma State this year, watch out for that team. Now, Spencer Sanders goes down with the ankle injury in week 1. They tried out Ethan Bullock for a second before they realized he just wasn't good. Then they turned to Illingworth, the true freshman, and he's been a revelation. He's getting the ball to Tylan Wallace, which in Oklahoma State's offense, that's what you got to do, because as good as Chuba Hubbard is, Tylan Wallace is the Cowboys' best player. And he needs a quarterback who can get him the ball down the field, and Illingworth has the arm strength to do that, and we've seen that through the first 3 weeks. I'll tell you what, that Pokes offense is going to be dangerous because they have the two guys that might be the best skill position players in the Big 12, in Hubbard and Wallace. And so, as long as Oklahoma State rolls with the hot hand in Illingworth, that's going to be a tough team to beat, guys.
I think they are going to be a tough team to beat, and I do have to tell you, okay, you're right, Shane Illingworth, fine. But he does have those key receivers who you just said, Tylan Wallace, phenomenal. And he's surrounded with all those good guys that he's able to get them the ball and able to produce those touchdowns. So,
all right, let's
congrats.
reorient. We got a game at the Cotton Bowl here this morning between the Sooners and the Longhorns. They've met every single year at this venue since the early 1930s. There's history here. It's one of those games where you just got to throw records and everything you know and everything you assume about both these teams out the window to a certain extent. So, with that said, Oklahoma coming off 2 very underwhelming performances on the defensive side of the football, guys. What is your message to the Sooners on defense in this game?
I'm just going to say it comes down to the drive. I see no fight in these guys. Now, last week, my final word was realistic. And what I meant by that was I wanted our defense to think more realistically about how they can play and where they excel at. And they still, against the Cyclones, were not able to do that. They can't afford all the penalties that they're having. So let's just take it back to the basics, guys. They need to break down their fundamentals. They need to change something that they're doing in their foundation to get them back up to those 5-star recruits that we saw coming in. I just think that overall, when I watch them, and of course, you know, we haven't really been able to watch them in a packed full stadium with everyone cheering for them. However, that really shouldn't matter. I don't think that should have such an impact for them to just look lazy and look sloppy, and that's what it comes down to. I need this defense to have some drive to them.
I have to go directly off of you, and my message has to be, where are you? Oh my gosh, where are the turnovers? Where are the forced fumbles? Where are the interceptions? It looks like this defense just can't tackle, and that the only time that they are prevalent is when they're getting penalties. They had 4 PIs last week, 4, which is just unacceptable, and it's the second time in a row that they let a first half double-digit lead slip. They're just not present for the second half, and you see that they're just running around like a bunch of chickens with their head cut off. They're ghosts. There's nobody there, and it's just not looking good, especially from key guys like Brian Mead and Delarian Turner-Yell, who are not producing. They're in these lead spots, and they're just missing easy tackles. Where are you, OU defense? I'd love to hear from you soon.
Touching is just not enough at this point. I think that the tackles are ridiculous as well. The form is just not there.
And why are they missing those easy tackles? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because they need to slow down. This speed D is playing with too much speed. They're being overly aggressive. They are over pursuing to the point of attack, and they're surrendering big plays as a result. As I look at where Oklahoma has come up short the last 2 weeks against Kansas State and Iowa State, it comes down to sloppy defensive play. And the reason for that sloppy defensive play is that the Sooners are moving too fast. They're getting ahead of themselves, and they're not zeroing in on the fundamentals, which is what's going to need to happen against a team like Texas.
Hold on, I just want to point out that I hate the term speed D. So here it is. See this? Speed D. No more. Let's get rid of that term because it's not there in any way, shape, or form.
It's not there, and they're absolutely getting way too ahead of themselves. It's like they're not NASCAR racers from, oh my gosh, they just can't. They need to stop.
All right, y'all, one thing to expect from the Longhorns today.
All right, I'm going with everyone's least favorite quarterback in the country, I'm assuming, but Sam Ehlinger. His total offensive yards are 924. Now, if you take a look at Rattler's stats, I think he's at like 970 at this point. I think that this guy is going to be dominant against our defense. Not only can he throw, but he uses every single one of his weapons around him. He's going to be able to excel off of our defensive line because they cannot get out of the gun fast enough. He's going to be able to drop back into that pocket for as long as he needs to. He's going to be patient, and he's leading the Longhorns in every aspect of the game that they need to be led in.
You know, I have to counter you. I'm sorry, but I do. I'm going to have to go with Texas is going to self-destruct. Self-destruction is what's going to happen to Texas. And I can back myself up on that. If OU has solid coverage on Ehlinger's receivers, like Brendan Eagles and Joshua Moore, throws will not be made. The throws could be picked off. I think Alice Grinch has the opportunity to step up and really show what they got. But I think that Texas, if the receivers are covered well and Sam Ehlinger has a lot of pressure on him, that they're going to panic. Panic will set in and they won't be able to overcome their own mistakes. They do tend to beat themselves up with penalties on positive plays, and we saw that last game with 12 penalties and a fumble from Keontae Ingram. Just was not looking good at all. I can guarantee that Texas self-destructs and that the nerves or something, maybe it's the mojo that just sets them off.
Oh, because our defense is just so intimidating, right?
Hey now. I'm expecting a comeback this game.
I hope you're right.
I'll tell you what, if this game is a firefight, a high-scoring affair, Oklahoma's going to win. However, where Texas will make their hay tomorrow, if Texas comes away with a win in this football game, it'll be because they run the ball and control the clock. And they've got the pieces to do it. Sam Ehlinger, Keontae Ingram, the guys that you mentioned, those guys that can control the clock for the Longhorns and make sure that the Sooners are playing at the Longhorns' place and not vice versa. So for me, if Texas is able to come away with the win, it's going to be because they control the clock. And that's what Oklahoma has to avoid. They've got to get off the field. They can't let Texas sustain long drives. It comes down to whether or not Oklahoma allows Texas to control the pace of the game. All right, guys, running up against the clock here, so let's zip through these and sign off here from Dallas. Your call out for the Sooners.
Charleston Rambo, ball out Charlie. Where you been, man? Our H-back should not be our leading receiver. I'm going to use a quote from Lincoln Riley that says, if your system is not a quarterback-friendly system, you need to find a new system. Charleston Rambo, that's you, my friend. You've got to do a better job. You've got to turn around. You've got to catch these big passes, and you've got to do better in the red zone.
Flipping on the other side of the ball, I'm going with Trey Brown. Trey Brown, you have so many missed opportunities and so many unnecessary fouls. It's your senior year. What are you doing? You look like an underclassman. You need to keep the momentum going and secure the plays. And by producing that elite coverage without breaking down is what's going to be the key to you being the best defensive back you can be.
Patrick Fields, I'm looking at you. You're the defensive captain, and I love you, man. You're a tremendously intelligent player, very well-spoken, phenomenal guy, but hey, you didn't bring it last week against Iowa State, and that's got to change, especially in a game of this magnitude and a rivalry game with as much at stake as there always is between these two teams. Patrick Fields, I'm looking at you as one guy that needs to bring it, and bring it in a big way against the Longhorns today. All right, final words, Caroline.
Initiate. Now, I'm going to put this in the most simple form possible. Step 1. Offense, defense, special teams, field goal kicker, placeholder. Step 1. Go back to the basics, take your time, and initiate those plays. Quit getting ahead of yourself and focus on one down at a time.
You know, I have to go with no expectations. Expect that the score is always 0-0 and that you're never going to be up and that you're never winning. That's all I have to say is just focus on yourselves and don't expect anything.
I'm going with zealous as my final word because here's the thing. As I said, in this game, when these two teams step onto the field in the Cotton Bowl, you got to throw everything out the window. It does not matter how good or how bad both these teams look coming into this game. It comes down to who comes out ready to hit the other team in the mouth on Saturday. Is that going to be Oklahoma or is that going to be Texas? And if it's going to be the Sooners, they got to be zealous. All right, final scores.
All right, I'm going 38-35 Longhorns. I didn't pick the upset last week, and I'm mad at myself, but I've got Texas all day, baby.
I do not. Close score, but I'm 36-35 OU. OU pulls it out and comes in hot.
High scoring affair, I believe the highest in the history of this rivalry. I'm taking the Sooners by a score of 55-52. And we're excited to see how it plays out, but that is going to be it from here in Dallas. For Shannon Earhart and Caroline Grace, I am Parker Thune. Send you back to the studio to take you the rest of the way. Goodbye from Dallas.
Welcome back to Gameday U. We have a little bit of time left, so let's wrap up the show with our picks for Week 6 of college football. First off, Kemper, which game should the people at home have on their TV screen today?
Okay, well, I wanted to go with Louisiana versus Coastal Carolina, which is, as we all know, the two best teams in the Big 12. But I'm going to go with a different game. I'm going to stick in the Big 12. I'm going to go with the OU-Texas B plot, and that is K-State and TCU, the Purple Battle. It's going to be fun. They've both got wins over these two teams. You know, K-State beat Oklahoma, obviously. TCU beat Oklahoma State, as they do fairly frequently these days. But I think this sets up an interesting matchup. It definitely has implications on Oklahoma and on Texas. You know, whoever wins this game, that loss immediately looks better. But, I like Kansas State to win this game. I think Skylar Thompson is just a little bit better than Max Duggins. Max Duggins has to do everything for that team, too. He's their leading rusher as well as their quarterback. I think Kansas State can figure them out pretty quick. I think they can get the big plays they need. I like Kansas State, but it should be a fun game to watch either way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely hope Kansas State wins.
Yes, we are Wildcat fans on Saturday.
Yeah. Yes, especially since the Big 12 is so up in the air this season. So I think it could go any way. So my game to watch is Arkansas at Auburn. Auburn has been playing mediocre this season, so that's why I think this is going to be a really interesting game to watch, especially since Arkansas beat Mississippi State last weekend. And Bo Nix could not get that offense going against Georgia, so I think this is going to be a really good test for that Auburn team. And I think at Arkansas, I really like Sam Pittman, you guys. I think he knows the SEC. I think he could really easily resurrect this Arkansas program. And I think that Arkansas could pull off the upset on this one.
To be fair about last week, I'm not sure anyone in the country can get it going against that Georgia defense.
It's
it's
so
nasty,
difficult.
it's scary. I hope we never have to see them.
Hopefully not. No. And, we'll see what Felipe Franks can do. Maybe he can push him to another upset.
Hero 2 weeks in a row.
Hero 2 weeks in a row. Exactly. All right, well, my game to watch is Pitt, Boston College.
Ooh.
This could be a close game. We have to look at the Pitt run defense. They've got 2 yards per carry and only 62 rushing yards per game. The Boston College pass offense with Phil Jurkovec. He's a transfer from Notre Dame, and he has 2 300-yard games. Now, both of them are really good at clock control, so we'll have to see. It's a solid defense versus solid offense.
I think Boston College is a little bit better than people give them credit for. I mean, we saw them almost beat UNC last week. I think Boston College has got a decent team this year.
I agree. Okay, so, all right, with all that said, let's break down some marquee matchups. First, UNC versus Virginia Tech. Who you got?
I like Virginia Tech here. UNC looked really slow last week. I think the Virginia Tech defense is going to be enough to slow them down. Sam Howell was picked as a Heisman candidate earlier this season by someone on this show. Sam Howell currently has 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the year. Not exactly Heisman numbers down in Chapel Hill.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I like Virginia Tech in this one. Not by a wide margin, but I like Virginia Tech.
I'm going to dissent, and I am picking North Carolina. I think that North Carolina has to stop the Virginia Tech run game, though. And I think that North Carolina also has a top defense, though they held Boston College to 40 yards on the run game last weekend, which I think is pretty good. But I think, and obviously I know that Sam Howell doesn't have those Heisman numbers, but I still think they have a great offense at North Carolina. So I'm picking UNC for this game. But I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to have to disagree with you and agree with Kemper. I'm picking the Hokies over the Tar Heels. It is all about the run game. It's going to be another close game. The Hokies have Hendon Hooker back. He was in quarantine for a while, but he's ready to go. It's a big run game. They got multiple options. They got Braxton Burmeister. They got a Kansas transfer and Khalil Herbert, who's had 311 yards and 3 TDs. They got a couple of run games. The Virginia Tech defense is going to add a lot of pressure on Sam Howell. They've had 13 sacks on the season, so I don't know. I think you go Virginia Tech.
That guy you mentioned, Khalil Herbert, 155 rushing yards a game, by the way. That guy's a beast.
Oh, yeah. He definitely is. Now, let's take it to the SEC. Florida versus Texas A&M. Kemper, who's winning this one?
You know, I think I spoiled this one in my hero. I'm very, very high on Florida right now, and I think a lot of people are low on A&M after that beating they took to from Alabama last week. I think Florida's just got too many keys on offense. There's nothing the defense can do to stop the Kyle driver. I mean, it's going to get in the end zone. It's just a matter of how many times and how many pass attempts it's going to take. I like Florida.
It's hard to not love that Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask duo that we see this season. And defense, Florida's defense is going to stop A&M's offense easily. I don't think Kellen Mond has it. And he got the chance last week. They kind of competed in the beginning against Alabama, but not like we should expect from them.
I don't know. I like the Kyles. I like the Kyle duo, but I'm going to have to disagree with both of y'all because A&M is going to beat the Gators. You mentioned Kellen Mond. He's been around for a while. He had great energy in the second half against Bama. Didn't really account for that game, but it's going to carry into this one. Late game production. He had 318 yards, 3 touchdowns against Bama, which is pretty good for that, get across that Bama defense. The Gator defense is lacking a little bit. I think A&M can punch through. It's definitely be an upset, but I think they can do it.
How do you explain that Vanderbilt game then, Will?
I don't know. A&M has the talk. We'll see if they have the walk.
A&M 100% has the talk. If there's one thing they've got in Aggieville, it's a lot of talk. But, A&M's never been known for their defense. This season, they only have 3 sacks. They've sacked a quarterback 3 times. If they can't get pressure on cool, calm, and collected Kyle, he's going to eat that defense alive.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But, all right, let's take it to the Bulldogs versus the Volunteers. Georgia versus Tennessee. What y'all got?
I like Tennessee. I think we could see an upset here. I know I literally just said I don't think anyone can get their offense going against Georgia, but I think the run game could be huge here for Tennessee. That offensive line is legit in Knoxville. The defensive line is not the strongest point of the Georgia defense, and I don't trust Georgia's quarterback. I think Tennessee, if there was ever a time that Tennessee could pull off a big upset, it's right here.
Kemper, Tennessee hasn't had it for years, and I don't think they have it again, even though I think they're overrated at number 14, and I think that this is going to be an easy win for Georgia. I think we are going to see that Tennessee is overrated, and Stetson Bennett knocked it out of the park last week, guys. I mean, come on. And UGA, like we said, amazing defense, so I think Bulldogs all the way.
I don't know. I haven't been a big fan of Georgia since that Rose Bowl game a couple of years ago, so I'm going with Tennessee.
No.
They had And I think it's going to be for the reason you don't think so. They've had barely any penalties. That's a big option for teams to take over. They've had barely any penalties, no turnovers. They're getting the basics done. They had a late start early season. I think they're going back to the late 90s, to the Manning era. I think Tennessee can carry it.
I am
Nope.
I am not buying Stetson Bennett at all, by the way. I see Kirby
He's
Smart.
early. He's early on.
Yeah, but I see Kirby Smart playing Stetson Bennett instead of JT Daniels right now, and I'm just like, are we going to watch him make the same mistake he made with Jake Fromm and Justin Fields? If I already think that's the biggest mistake that has been made by any college football coach in the country right now. But if he makes that mistake again, get him out.
Oh, definitely. But going back to the ACC, down in Death Valley, the Clemson Tigers and the Miami Hurricanes. This is the big one. Which team y'all got?
I don't have a ton of notes on this. I'm going Clemson. The reason I don't have a ton of notes on this is because I haven't watched Clemson play in the regular season in like 3 or 4 years, because they haven't had a game worth watching in the regular season for 3 or 4 years. This is the earliest game that they've played that's been interesting on their schedule in a while, but too much talent on that Clemson team, too much speed on the defense. They can keep up with De'Aaron King. I like Clemson. I think they're going to blow them out.
I agree. I really like this Miami team this year, though, so it's hard for me to pick Clemson. But I think overall Clemson has more experience, and I think it's at Clemson, which is a big deal because they're not in Miami, so Miami won't have that home team advantage. But I think I'm picking Clemson. Like I said, they have more experience, so I'm picking Miami. Or I'm not picking Miami. I'm sorry, I'm picking Clemson.
I don't know. The ACC is way deeper this year than it's been before, and for that, I'm taking Miami. I think the Hurricanes, they have the #1 offense of the ACC. De'Aaron King, we've seen him play at Houston. He's great here. He's super creative as a quarterback. Cameron Harris, their running back, 311 yards, 5 touchdowns for the first 3 games. They got a solid O-line. I think they're looking like the old Miami defense back in 2002. I think they have a chance to take it.
I get what you're saying about them looking improved, but I just don't think they've got the juice yet.
I don't know. All right, let's move on to the biggest battle of the year, the Crimson and Cream versus the Burnt Orange. It's OU and Texas. And Kemper, I want to know who comes out ahead.
I got no idea. I don't know, man. Both these teams have the same issues. They have defensive problems. I have zero clue. I'm going to go with Oklahoma because I'm biased. But truthfully, I just don't know. It's going to be about which team makes less mistakes.
I agree with that. I think this is going to be an even matchup between OU and Texas, which were, like a lowerly even matched up game, which is unfortunate. But OU needs to work on the defense if they're going to win. I'm picking OU to win this game. I think that we're going to come back, hopefully, but we are not tackling. We need to work on the basics, I think, before we work on the let's create turnovers, because we're not tackling, like I said, and that's so fundamental before you start to work on the bigger stuff. And I think that we can't mess up on the offense. We've been having a lot of penalties in our games, and we need to eliminate
too
those.
Many penalties.
But so is Texas. That's what I'm saying. They have the same problems.
No, exactly.
They do.
These are incredibly evenly matched teams,
Yes.
and not in a good way. Not at all. But I still got to go with Oklahoma, and I'm going to say because of their performance in other OU Texas games, they've got 2 really massive chips on their shoulder that they shouldn't have. OU Texas has always been a big game, and last season they've really, the OU defense really showed out for Texas. They had 9 sacks on Sam Ehlinger, and I think that same energy is going to carry into this game. I think they're going to win it. It's not going to be pretty, though.
That's what I'm hoping for. Is I was thinking about that too earlier today, how great the defense looked last year and how the 9 sacks happened. We were like, whoa, where did this come from?
Exactly.
I'm really hoping OU can have another OU Texas like that, and that this can really serve as a course corrector, because the Big 12 is still wide open. Oklahoma State hasn't played Oklahoma or Texas yet, and they're the only undefeated Big 12 team. The Big 12 championship is not lost for Oklahoma yet, but they've got to win today. It's lost if they lose to Texas.
I don't know if we can fix our mistakes, though, on defense in 1 week, and I think that's going to be a big thing to see in this Texas game. I think it's going to be an offensive matchup.
Like I said, this isn't going to be pretty at all. It's probably going to come down to a field goal. We're going to see what happens. But thank you for watching Gameday U here in Gaylord Hall at the University of Oklahoma. We'll be here next week, same time, same place. Keep up with Gameday U on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Ashley Vandeveld, Kemper Ball, and the whole crew, I'm Will Blessing. Have a safe and fun game day, and we'll see you next time.